All right, well, sat here with cadiaN, obviously going to just have a nice little chat. We're going to talk all things heroic and Counter-Strike. Okay, one thing I wanted to get into and talk to you about, because I know we have so many new viewers in Counter-Strike these days, I don't think everyone's fully aware of the entire legend of cadiaN or story of cadiaN. Because I don't know, like part of me, when I was thinking about your career, thinking about like this conversation was, you know, if you were in a Hollywood movie, you'd be like the hermit in the desert of like some post-apocalyptic world. Like you just weren't, for whatever reason, able to establish yourself in like tier 1 Danish Counter-Strike in the early days of CSGO. And just over your career, just going through the team list, just you've had to play with like, you know, not the rejects, but like the unwanted, I guess, which isn't much better, I guess. You even were like outcast into like North America, like the true wasteland for a while. You did like a year over there. So I mean, let's just kind of talk about those kind of early stages, because I don't think people fully realize like the sort of redemption arc and journey that you had to go on to get back to this level. It's taken a long time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like I had a crazy uprise just when my career started with the qualification for the very first major, then signed a contract with Mousesports. But the thing is, like, for two of the first teams that I played on, like Mousesports and SK, I definitely also compromised a lot with like my role, right? I was always the IGL and the AWP. And in these two teams, like at Mouse, Chris was the AWPer, and in SK, Freeze was the AWPer, right? And I thought to myself that I could easily play like a secondary AWP and that my capabilities with the rifle would be good enough. I think nowadays I would definitely be able to do so in a much better way, but that's also because I'm way smarter at the game now than I was back
way more
then.
fleshed out as a player.
Yes. So like that definitely hurt like on the statistic base a bit, and you all know how it is, especially back then, like young IGL, maybe too much confidence, maybe didn't have the exact way of introducing his philosophies and stuff like this, and not playing his primary role, so his statistics were like 1 or 0.98 or whatever, then you just get cut. And especially when like you maybe also had some like attitude problems back in the early stages of your career, that kind of vibe, that kind of story that people are telling about you is just going to hang on for a long time. Yeah. So I mean, my advice definitely for the young players out there is like try and behave.
Yeah, learn that lesson early.
Learn that lesson early, because it's going to take you a long time to come back from it. And also I think like one of the most important lessons is also just to be a good teammate, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of it is also misunderstood, because I mean, back then or now I'm still like yelling at my teammates, right? Like even in practice, you can put us in practice against the top 45 team in the world, and we're making some stupid mistakes that we literally just talked about from reviewing one of our games at the AMA, and we're making the same mistake. And I can tell you, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna tell people when it's not good enough.
That's the time to yell at them, is practice.
Exactly, and like it was like that back then. But also I think when you mature, when you get older, you have more authority and you have a better way of doing it, and you have more respect from your teammates, and then it's just they will receive it completely different. So yeah, definitely a rough start, you know, because I think like the individual talent that I have now, I've had for many years, and also like when you're younger, I also think like my capability, like the thing is when you get to be like an experienced AWPer, I think sometimes you lose a little bit of that craziness, the flicks and stuff, because you end up just learning how to play it smart. So you don't end up in
smart and efficient.
So you don't end up in the situation where you have to flick left and flick right, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, so then you lose, the skill doesn't get developed any further.
Yeah, you just back then I remember I was doing more crazy stuff, right? Yeah. But yeah, I definitely learned a lot from back then. So I mean, it's a pretty crazy story, right? And a lot of people would probably have stopped at some point.
Right. Yeah. That's the other thing. Well, especially when you think that you were, I don't know if you were the first, but I think maybe like one of the first like longest stints in North America for a European player. Yeah. I think obviously Cirque has taken that over, but under wildly different conditions. Yeah. But I mean, a European coming to play in a North American team was just unheard of at the time, and you had to come play not only for a North American team, but like the 5th best North American team.
And probably like
and for a year as well.
Probably number 8 or 9 when I joined them. Like, the reason was that Rogue had a European team, which I was playing. First it was with Maniac, HS, Tensky.
You played with Maniac?
Blaze, not a long period.
What was he like?
I mean, I think
You can rag on him. It's
I
fine.
mean, I think back then that he taught me so much in a short period of time, but for me at least sometimes, and maybe I wasn't correct, but I feel like sometimes he could have a hard time using the stuff that he knew. Like when he would explain it,
Okay.
I sometimes didn't see him using that himself in game.
Yeah.
But obviously he was a guy that knew so much more about the game than I did, and like he had like this holy Bible. I still have it actually, like a huge Google document where it was like saying a lot of teams of like how to be in a team and as teammates and stuff.
What a nerd.
Yeah, what a nerd. But a very clever nerd. Very clever nerd.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think like you can see it also from the amount of languages he speaks, the way he's educated himself and stuff like this, that he's a very smart guy. So he taught me a lot. I think under different circumstances, we could have played together for longer, but I also think it was one of his last teams, if not the last. But we made a change. We got in two pretty different types from HS and Maniac, which was Victor and Bubble. Yeah. And
the Bulgarians.
Yes, and we already had a small culture clash back then because the Bulgarians were used to spy leaders, so they were like, why are you not yelling at me? Like they were like, and then they had two Danes in my team. Was like,
wanted to get yelled at.
Who didn't want it, you know? Like, explain it to me calmly, please. Don't yell at me. So like, it was like this complete culture clash. But we did pretty good, considering like the amount of talent in the team. Became like top 25 in the world. Won one of the global ECA things for Mountain Dew League or whatever it was called. Yeah, MDL. Yeah, and yeah, we did okay at some lands. And then I had a really good relationship with the organization because I was the captain and stuff. So when they needed one, there was some Wardell story. I don't know if you remember it. He signed. Probably do. He signed from Ghost to Rogue.
That's right. I remember this.
And then like 20 hours before the deadline, he was like, nah, not anyways. And then he went back to Ghost or something. Brilliant. So they needed one, and they called me, and I told myself I'll go there for 3 months. Make some money. Yeah. Make them survive in the pro league because they were like at the relegation, but they were like dead last or second last. And I got there, and we just developed a really good project quickly. I changed quite a few players, 2 or 3. Yeah. And ended up with like
I have it because I even had to write it down. I didn't remember Hiko, Sick, Vice, and Rika from Australia from Renegades. That's a weird team that you put together.
It's a really weird team. The only 2 we had coming in was Hiko and Vice. And I liked them a lot, really. Then we had like Shinobi, who was like kind of the hunting of NA, like bad stats, but IGL. But I took over the IGL role after like 2 weeks because I didn't see his vision. And then the last guy was Wrath. I don't know if you.
I remember. I don't know much about him.
This crazy prodigy, but he was one of a kind.
We have a lot of those in North America. Yes. Like the talented prodigies that just have like some wildly critical flaw.
Yes, he kept texting our coach like, why am I not put in these positions? I can give you 110 ADR. I can be a star player. And then we put him in the position, and he was just like dead quiet, not making any plays, not doing anything. Yeah. And so we got like when we got sick from the Misfits project, which died. That was a huge scoop, and the same with Ricky. He also just like Ricky is a guy where he's ready to think out of the box. So this is one of the first teams.
Out of the box is a good way to describe him.
Yeah. Which is one of the first teams I had where people had full trust in me and my philosophies, and that really showed with the qualification at the major and stuff like this.
And you guys were looking a little dangerous in that team for a while. Was this before you rang? Was it TSM that you played for, like an E-League, like the all-American TSM lineup as well? That lasted less than a year, I think.
Yeah, I had to stand in for Twist.
That's right.
As a rifle player. So good luck with that if you all remember.
You played good that event though. I remember being there like, oh, cadiaN just stepped into this team and just had a great event.
Yeah, that was really funny. Like it was with Semphis and Automatic and these guys, and I actually built a really good relationship with the Automatic and Sick, who was also at like they were living at this team house, and especially FNS also. Yep. And I think especially like FNS, Automatic, and Sick, I created a good relationship with, because it was also the first time I tried this gaming house experience, which is definitely different.
Not the way to go? No heroic gaming house in the future?
I think the way they did it, to be honest, was one of the better ones, where everyone had separate rooms, of course, with the PCs in, and then they had like an office where you would travel to and have team practice sitting next to each other. Okay. So like you had also days where you could practice from the rooms, which gave you a bit more of a chill vibe,
Yeah, they brought that whole League of Legends philosophy over.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Throughout this whole stretch in your career, trying to figure things out, and you're out in North America, you're out in the wasteland, you're kind of not figuring things out. I mean, you played with a lot of guys who got some opportunities probably before you got yours. Megas is a big one who probably got moved up before you found a second chance.
Was well deserved though back in
certainly.
He was so good.
Yep. Caribbean was obviously there. You played with as well. I don't know. Is there a player from this time that I don't? You mentioned like Maniac having a positive influence. Are there guys like that you can like a landmark along this journey that have like you've learned something significant from or helped you develop to get to that next place?
I mean,
outside of Maniac's Bible.
Yeah, outside of his Bible. I mean, I think that like every team, whoever was on the team, whether I liked them as a person or not, taught me things.
Took something from them.
Yeah, like in-game, out-game, stuff like this. Also, I think you learn how to manage to play in a team where A, you like the players, or B, you dislike some of them, and you learn how to cope with that in terms of leadership, right? And that's also the things like I've been the IGL for my teams ever since I was like 14, right? Obviously, probably not pretty good at it back then, but qualifying for my first major as IGL at 17 or 18. Now I've been doing that for 10 years, you know, and you learn a lot, like from all the crazy scenarios. Like I've had it all: teammates crying, teammates leaving mid-official, having to call them on the phone to get back. And this is someone who's still active on the pro scene. So I've tried it all because, like, all I can say is crazy stuff happen and you don't expect it. You know, people showing up drunk as well for practice.
Hey, we got plenty of that in North America. So, come on back, baby.
Yeah. So I know how it works, you know.
Allegedly.
Yeah, only 4 or 5 drinks. How much it was.
If you look back now with like hindsight, like a little bit of like a review on your own career, is there like a fork in the road moment that you feel like could have like done things differently? You know, like is there like a decision that you can point to where you're like, man, I wouldn't have had to like go spend a year and a half in North America. I wouldn't have had to go like stand in for all these random teams or try and make all these projects work. If I had just like said yes instead of no here, can you think of one?
I think like maybe it's not so much like team decision and stuff, because I think accepting the stand-in offer for all the teams has gone pretty good, because I'm also pretty good at like just adapting and figuring out whatever happens on the fly. That's also my current play style a lot, you know, on the fly stuff. But I think maybe more that I had too many years where I didn't value working really hard enough.
Okay.
So there's definitely a few years where like
you could say that about a lot of people in the early days of CSGO. Like nobody really knew or understood at the time that we would get here to like where the teams are now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was 22 and all my friends were starting university and
Partying.
A lot of parties, girls, you know, that kind of stuff where, I mean, I loved CS, but I didn't love it the way I do now. So, I mean, it's always easy to say like, oh, if I would have worked hard back then, but I definitely, like, if I could give younger me an advice, it would be respect CS more, put more time and effort into it. And I mean, I played a lot, but I think the hours wasn't exactly well spent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you played a lot, but not efficiently.
I mean, I was one of those, like, I could also play a lot of Face-It games or stream for 10 hours or whatever it might be, but I mean, that's just not efficient.
Do you think if you didn't have that like wealth of experience with all those various teams and all those tough situations, do you think you'd be able to like kind of handle this heroic project the way that you've kind of done it? Like, do you think you'd be equipped as a leader to be able to like pull these, as you mentioned, 4 guys who hadn't been to a major until Stockholm?
Yeah.
Like, do you think you really would have been able to bring them together in the way that you have?
No, probably a lot, because like I've been growing a lot as a person, but also I think like from being in some of the other teams, for example, North, where you can feel like that kind of wanting to sacrifice for one of another and wanting to put in the extra hour and stuff, when that energy wasn't there. That's one of the things that when I joined the heroic team, and especially when I took over the captaincy, that I have just put that out and emphasized it so many times that if you're here, this is how it's going to be. You're going to work your ass off. You're going to put in the time. You're going to be motivated for every practice. You're going to be the best part that you can be. And don't underestimate the power that it has that the guy that you're sitting next to is willing to jump an angle for you or pick up your suitcase when you lost it somewhere. Like, it doesn't even have to be in-game stuff, but just that kind of feeling that the friendship and the camaraderie, you know.
Fostering an environment where the guy next to you wants to work hard for you and you feel the same way back.
And I've just like really experienced that in a few teams now, that kind of feeling and power, you can't underestimate it, because there's so much drive and power in that.
It's an elusive elusive emotion to like really beat into a team. That's a hard thing to get a team to really buy into.
I mean, as long as just one guy is like, it dies completely. So, I mean, it's easy to say, but it's super difficult to have people to like live by those kind of standards and rules because, I mean, you can also have players where they'll probably get annoyed when we play practice and I'm like, dude, what is going on? You are not doing what you're supposed to. And he's like, yeah, man, it's just a practice, you know?
Yeah.
And like,
Allen Iverson, we call
I'm having none of that here, you know? I'm having none of that here. Like, we need to practice the way we want to perform. And literally, I'm all for like round 30 in the practice, buy your Bison, your P90, let's do some troll stuff. But at least 29 rounds, it's complete focus. You talk also when you're dead. You see what you see from your teammates. If there's any gaps, you're engaged. You don't put up, like, anyone putting up their phone mid-practice, man. I'm telling you, I'm having none of that either, so yeah.
I like it. That's good. What is it now then? Like, what is the focus on for you as the leader of Heroic? Like, we've seen teams over the years get to this point in their lifespan where, like you guys, you've shown that you can beat everyone in the world. You've shown, like, there's no team that you guys cannot beat on a given day.
Yeah.
And the only problem that you guys have had is like getting over that final hurdle, that final hump to like winning the big event, like quarterfinals, semifinals. You've proven you can perform on them, and as you've said in interviews, you know, LAN was doubted, you proved them wrong. You know, being one of the top 3 teams in the world, you proved them wrong. What is the focus now to get over that last 5%? You know, that's always the hardest one. We've seen teams make it so close to the summit a number of times, and they can never find that way to fully scale the mountain, so to speak.
I mean, there's a few scenarios, right? There's a scenario that we're just not better than this, right? This is our cap. Who knows?
Yeah.
Then there's the other scenario which I'm working way more off. That from what I feel when we play the games, I know that we have the talent within the team. The 5 players to win big titles. I know that's definitely a capability. But from what I'm seeing as a leader, it's that my philosophy is a lot that, okay, I have the last call. I'm opening up 95% of the rounds with my calling. But we play with 10 eyes, 10 ears, 5 heads. So if you see something, you react to it, right? You're not afraid. Like, I've had so many scenarios also in this team where there's a smoke which is kind of not in a good position, the opponent messed it up, And he's like, what do you think? Should we use the smoke? And I'm like running like for 10 seconds to come and look at the smoke. And I'm like, literally, man,
make the decision.
This smoke is dog. And you see it. So let's abuse it. Let's like go inside it. Let's pop through it. Like you can see this as well as I can. So I'm living by that philosophy. And that kind of thinking and process is something that at times in the biggest games against like FaZe, Na'Vi, in the arenas, we have lost a little bit of. So then it's even more pressure on me, and then my individual performance drops 5%.
Slides a little bit.
I'll still make the right decision in calling, but my individual level will drop 5%, and that's maybe the edge because we can all see that. Okay, there's the star AWPers in Brokey, Simple, Monesi, you name them, and I'm not in that category. Like I believe that if I was not the IGL, my stats would definitely be a bit better. It would not be the simple rating. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying it would be better. And I think with time, my teammates learning even more to make the decision making, I'll thrive as well.
That's a really frustrating philosophy to kind of have to develop in a team too, because like you're telling people like you have to take some responsibility and you have to be able to make this call. Like you can't rely on me running over from the other side of the map to take a look and figure things out. Like this call is going to fall on you. Some guys don't like that responsibility.
No, they don't. And I mean,
and you got to put up with a lot of mistakes too as you're teaching people to hold that mantle.
For sure. But right now the issue is that because some people are not doing it, they're not making the mistake. Because they'd rather not.
So then they don't learn from the mistake.
Exactly. So for me right now, I'm saying, listen, right now I don't care if you make the wrong decision, as long as you make a decision. Because then we can look at the game afterwards and say, okay, I'm looking at your POV now when we're reviewing this game, and I think that in this situation you shouldn't handle it this way. You should think about that we are at a man-up advantage. You should just chill it out, just hold the position, wait for the decision to be made. Or I can tell you took this decision and it was wrong because X, Y, and Z. Like if you don't make it, we can sit forever and I can be like, why did you not make a decision? And that for me, that's the most annoying part.
The inaction is really tough to get over.
Yes, the inaction is the problem. So, I mean, I know the minds of all of them, and we study theory 2 hours, 6 days a week, right? surely these brains can work it out, and I know they can. So they're also doing it, and they're progressing a lot. These young guys, they're super clever. They are way more clever than people think. Also, I'm getting, for some parts, a lot of credit, and from other parts, they're not really talking too much about it, but they're also playing a big role in understanding my calls and my philosophies, right? Like, no matter how clever you are, if you're not able to explain it, and if they're not able to understand it, it falls to the ground, right? So
you've had some great increases in level from these guys. I mean, Stown has been an absolute revelation, probably since like Stockholm onward. It's been like, holy hell, that jump came out of nowhere. Yeah.
I mean, he's been that good for a long time. There's also been like a short period of time where I think maybe I was like, okay, he's not producing the same numbers in officials as he is in practice, but now he has for more than a year. I think
it clicked in at some point.
It did, it really did. But I also think for a long part, like it was like me, Tessis, and Stown was like equally good in terms of rating and stuff throughout most of like 2020 and 2021. But he's definitely taken a leap in the latter part, like you said, of 2021 and stuff. My performance has dropped a little, Tessis has dropped a little. And I think we're also both really looking to gain those 5% extra, because
those little ones back.
We know we can do that. We know we can perform better, and it's definitely going to help the team. And I mean, Shus has just been like the perfect anchor, right? You always know what to get from him. He's so good. Refresh, more of the X factor. Has some games where he's not performing up to the standard that we believe he can, and then he has a lot of games as well where he's like blowing our minds with what he can produce and stuff like this. So, I mean, you see it in many teams, you know, that's different personalities.
Play a lot of Counter-Strike in the year. Like, there's no way for everyone to like keep it up throughout the entire year. Like, somewhere there's going to be the dips and the rises on every player. All right, and that's our chat. Thank you very much, cadiaN, for stopping by. It was a good time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.